Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I'm creating to not only bring awareness to the day-to-day realities of living with complex trauma, but also to delve into its mechanisms, the understandings of them, to empower and help us to build a better base, to heal, and to improve the quality of our lives. Now in this video, this one's going to be a hard one due to the sheer amount of individualistic information, but also as it's one of the most primary fuel sources for so many facets of traumatic expression and the traumatic symptoms that we feel. And of course, I'm talking about fear and anxiety, the two relatives of each other that feed off each other. And I'll have to do several videos to explain these, and I will space them out because of what they bring up. But in this video, I just want to get across the most basic of understandings to help you find a way to understand how fear and anxiety play out for you individually. And for every single one of us, it is very individualistic. So one of the greatest battles that I've had over my many decades of trying to advocate for better support and understanding for mental health and for trauma, healing is all these misunderstandings and misconceptions around words, around the different responses trauma has. When we start to look at fear and anxiety, there is this understanding that fear is one thing and anxiety is one thing, and we all feel it to varying degrees of this one thing at different stages of our journey. But the reality is far from that. Fear and anxiety responses, our threat responses, the fuel that drives our threat responses, are developed in the womb. If your mother faces stuff that is pushing her stress levels, her threat responses, all that information and hormones cross the placenta and shape our physiology to create a heightened response to fear, to create a heightened response to anxiety. And as a result, we grow and develop, when that is continually reinforced, to having a greater capacity for a heightened states of fear and anxiety. Think of it as a difference of the more in utero and in the first couple of years post-birth. In all those developmental years, every major or prolonged exposure to threat adds another cylinder to your fear and anxiety engine. It increases its capacity to a more extreme response. And in those developmental years, because it alters brain structure, it alters the scope and capacity of the HP axis, it alters the scope and capacity of our adrenal functionalities, and everything that tries to create a survival mechanism or a way of living in a threatening environment within our body is developed. And it takes resources from other developmental aspects to reinforce these aspects of I'm under threat constantly. We are born and shaped that way. As I said, we've added so many cylinders to that particular resource that it becomes such a dominant component in our lives. It's one of the understandings of why there are so many extreme responses in trauma survivors, why there is more anger and aggression, more adrenaline-fueled responses, more outbursts, is because of that heightened number of cylinders in that mechanism. Like I know myself, the way I respond to threat is for me to be able to take physical action, I have to push to such a heightened adrenaline level that the response is to the extreme for that situation. And I've noticed that, and I've learned that, and I've spoken with countless trauma survivors who have this same thing because of dealing with pre-verbal. To be able to action a fight or a flight response, we have to push the adrenaline to a dangerously high level. And that is why, when people don't understand why children that go through all these levels of abuse don't fight back, is because they can't. Because if they do, we get the response that we see, where a bullied kid goes over the top in a school and then the whole world blames the bullied kid. That is pushing through. That is that mechanism of fighting and pushing, finally pushing through, calling on that amount of adrenaline to respond to that fear and anxiety state, to be able to action something, to try to get away or to try to stop it. When we start to understand how fear and anxiety works, at the very least, and I'm not even going to pretend that I'm even close to resolving mine. My physical life is so debilitated by these states because of what I went through so young. But I'm aware of why, and that is why I'm trying to advocate this for those of you that don't have it to this degree. And I'm also trying to advocate for greater understanding out there, with the hope that we get greater support for the therapies that can actually help us. I am a very firm believer that if MDMA therapies can be taken out of happy feel-good pills in actual microdosing and using the, from a therapeutic process to teach the nervous systems to respond, and through neuroplasticity alter the structures of the brain and alter our physiology to have a more balanced threat response, to have a more balanced workings with fear and anxiety states, we can over time benefit and alter the lives of countless numbers of people. But it's understanding that your fear and anxiety states did not happen at the event of trauma. They were developed in the womb. The precursors, and you'll see this is one of the components of generational trauma, is all the infants are developed in the womb to come in to be born into a hostile environment. Therefore, there is a more extreme. This is why in poverty areas and generational areas you see more violence, is because of that whole precondition to be born into a hostile environment. There are countless studies backing this up. The Felitti studies, I refer to them a lot because there's so many of them. But they back all this stuff up. Understanding polyvagal theory, the same. It shows all these mechanisms within us that are designed to better our survival, short term. But where trauma becomes the issue is that short term becomes long term, becomes our lived day-to-day experience. So as you begin to explore what to take away from this video, as you begin to explore understanding your own personal fear and anxiety states, where possible, start to gain an understanding of your beginning. And even if it's some of it's common sense when we're looking at adoptees, foster kids and all of that, if you were removed or you were taken for whatever reason, your mother was under threat. Therefore, you have that in utero preconditioning towards a heightened fear and anxiety state. You have a born preconditioning to heightened responses and development of PTSD and CPTSD and so forth and so forth. Regardless of what some white coat will say, without running these tests and without you doing this, and this, we cannot say for sure diagnostically. Yeah, you can. It's simple common sense. If it happens for one, it will happen to another. So that understanding alone gives you the capacity to go, well, I know why I respond so extreme. And it is slowly working on creating ecologies that better support the healing of your neurophysiology to be able to better respond to the world to bring a more balanced state. And it does take time. And it takes support. And it takes grace and understanding from those around you to be able to do this. And as always, I really like your questions and feedback. And when we're exploring these fear and anxiety states, I would dearly love your questions and feedback to know where to take this. As I said, it is a vastly huge subject. It's a subject that I struggle with a great deal because of my day-to-day reality. And also what created my day-to-day reality. But I want to impart what I've learned that keeps me here. But also what I've learned that I cannot initiate in my life because of my circumstances. But maybe if you guys are aware, you can in yours. So as always, please be mindful, please be respectful, safe. Please be kind to yourselves and those around you. And I'll see you next time.